Jake Morrison and his friends were disgusted when they saw Zara Washington make the cheer squad at Westfield High. To them, she was a black girl who didn't belong among their traditionally white cheerleaders. So they tried to get rid of her the only way they knew how, by attacking. But what Jake couldn't see beneath Zara's composed silence was tactical training from her Navy SEAL father. They thought she was helpless, thought she'd crumble like all his previous victims. He was catastrophically wrong, and Zara Washington was about to teach him exactly what happened when entitled Bullies fatally underestimated a soldier's daughter. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The gymnasium buzzed with nervous energy as 23 girls lined up for final cheer team announcements. Zara Washington stood third from the left, her hands steady at her sides despite the hammering in her chest. She'd nailed every routine, hit every mark, and smiled until her cheeks ached during 3 grueling days of tryouts. "Ladies, you've all shown incredible spirit and dedication," Coach Peterson began, her clipboard held like a shield. "This year's Westfield High varsity cheer team will represent our school with pride and excellence." Zara's eyes swept the gym, taking in the sea of blonde ponytails and spray tans surrounding her. She caught sight of the football team filtering in through the side doors. Their practice had just ended. Jake Morrison led the pack, his quarterback swagger evident even in sweaty practice gear. Tyler Knox flanked him, thick arms crossed over his chest, while Brandon Mills trailed behind, desperate to belong. "The following girls have earned their place on this year's squad," Coach Peterson continued. She read through the list alphabetically, each name met with squeals and embraces. Zara Washington. The words hit her like lightning. She'd made it. Actually, made it. Around her, congratulations mixed with barely concealed surprise from some of the other girls. Zara kept her expression controlled, professional, the way her father had taught her. From across the gym, she felt eyes on her. Jake Morrison was staring, his jaw tight. He leaned over to whisper something to Tyler, who shook his head with disgust. Brandon just looked confused, following his friend's lead. "Congratulations to our new Eagles," Coach Peterson clapped. "Team meeting tomorrow after school. We have a lot of work ahead of us before homecoming." As the celebration continued around her, Zara gathered her gym bag and headed for the exit. The football players had positioned themselves near the doors, a convenient coincidence that made her pulse quicken. "Excuse me," she said politely, trying to pass. Jake stepped slightly to the right, not quite blocking her path, but making it clear she had to squeeze by. "So you're the new addition to our cheer squad." "That's right." Zara met his gaze directly. "Interesting choice by Coach Peterson." Tyler's voice carried just enough volume for nearby students to hear. "Very progressive. I earned my spot, just like everyone else," Zara replied evenly. Brandon shifted uncomfortably, but stayed silent as Jake smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Oh, I'm sure you did. It's just that our fans have certain expectations about what their cheerleaders should look like." The words hung in the air like smoke. Other students slowed their conversations, sensing tension. "And what exactly should they look like?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the heat building in her chest. "You know," Jake shrugged, "traditional. The kind of girls who represent Eagle pride, blonde hair, school spirit, the whole package. Like Barbie dolls?" Zara tilted her head slightly. Tyler stepped forward. "Like girls who belong here. Girls who understand what this school is about." "I understand perfectly." Zara adjusted her bag strap. "This school is about excellence, academics, and representing our community with pride." "That's exactly what I plan to do." Jake's smile faltered for just a moment before returning. "We'll see about that. Football season's a long road. Lots of games, lots of pressure. Not everyone's cut out for it. Good thing I am." She pushed past them without another word, feeling their stares burn into her back. Meanwhile, the three boys watched her walk away, their expressions darkening as other students filtered past them toward the parking lot. "Are you kidding me right now?" Jake's voice dropped low, meant only for his friends. "They actually put her on the squad?" Tyler spat toward the trash can. "This is exactly the kind of garbage that's ruining our school." "What's next? They gonna make us kneel for the anthem, too?" "Dude, what if she's one of those girls who thinks she's better than everyone?" Brandon finally spoke up, his voice uncertain but trying to match their energy. "Like, acts all smart and stuff?" "Oh, she definitely thinks she's something special," Jake replied, his jaw clenched. "Did you see how she looked at us? Like we were the problem." Tyler's face twisted with disgust. "I'm not cheering next to that. My dad's gonna lose his mind when he finds out they put some diversity hire on the squad instead of Ashley Martinez. Ashley's been waiting 2 years for this." "It's not right, man," Jake shook his head. "Our fans don't want to see that representing our school. They want real Eagle girls, not some—" He let the sentence hang, but his meaning was clear to his friends. Brandon nodded eagerly, desperate to fit in. "Yeah, exactly. Like, what are people gonna think when they see our cheerleaders? This isn't that kind of school." "Well, she's about to find out what kind of school this really is," Tyler said, cracking his knuckles. "Football season's gonna be real educational for her." Jake's smile returned, cold and calculating. "Oh yeah, real educational." The harassment started small, almost innocent enough to dismiss as coincidence. Monday morning, Zara arrived at her locker to find it slightly ajar. Her combination lock hung open, and someone had rearranged her books. Nothing missing, just disturbed. She glanced around the hallway, catching Jake Morrison's eye 3 lockers down. He was talking to some sophomore girl, but his attention kept drifting to Zara. "Weird," she muttered, reorganizing her textbooks. By third period, word had spread about the new cheer roster. Zara felt the stares in every hallway, heard the whispered conversations that stopped when she passed. Some students smiled encouragingly, but others looked confused, like she was a puzzle they couldn't solve. "Hey, Zara?" Madison Clark, one of the senior cheerleaders, caught up with her after English class. "I'm so excited you made the team. We're gonna have such an amazing season." "Thanks, Madison. I can't wait to get started." "Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong, okay? You earned this just like the rest of us." The fact that Madison felt the need to say it confirmed what Zara already suspected. People were talking. During lunch, she sat with her usual group of friends from Honor Society when Tyler Knox walked past their table. His shoulder bumped her chair hard enough to jostle her backward. "Oops," he said, without stopping or looking back. "Sorry about that." Her friend Jessica frowned. "That was weird. Tyler's never that clumsy." "Maybe he's having an off day," Zara replied, but she was already cataloging the incident in her mind. The real message came during 7th period study hall. Zara pulled out her phone to check the time and found a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged her in a post. The image was a screenshot of the school's announcement about the new cheer team, with Zara's name circled in red. The caption read, "Guess Westfield's going woke now. R.I.P. Real Eagle Pride. Fran not my cheerleader." The post had already garnered 37 likes and a handful of comments that made her stomach turn. Most were carefully worded to avoid outright slurs, but the message was crystal clear. "Diversity hire much? She doesn't even look like she belongs here. There goes the neighborhood." Zara screenshotted everything before blocking the account, which belonged to someone named Eagle Pride 2024, obviously fake. Her hands were shaking slightly as she put her phone away. That afternoon at cheer practice, the tension was palpable. Coach Peterson ran them through basic routines, but Zara could feel the sideways glances from some of her teammates. Madison and a few others were genuinely welcoming, but others seemed to be waiting to see what would happen. "All right, ladies, let's run through the homecoming routine one more time," Coach Peterson called out. "Zara, you'll be in the back row for now, until you learn all the formations." As they lined up, Brittany Stevens, a junior with perfectly curled blonde hair, positioned herself directly in front of Zara. During the routine, she kept stepping backward slightly, forcing Zara to adjust her spacing. "Sorry," Brittany would whisper each time, still getting used to the new formation. By the end of practice, Zara had been stepped on twice and elbowed once during a turn sequence. All accidents, according to Brittany's apologetic smile. Walking to her car afterward, Zara noticed the football team finishing their practice on the adjacent field. Jake Morrison was deep in conversation with Coach Reynolds, both of them glancing toward the parking lot where the cheerleaders were loading their gear. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "How was the first practice, Warrior?" "Fine," she typed back, then deleted it. "Good. Learning the routines. Pick you up for dinner? Want to hear all about it? I'll drive myself home. See you there." That evening, sitting across from her father at their kitchen table, Zara picked at her grilled chicken, while Commander Washington studied her with the intense focus that had made him an effective military leader. "You're quiet tonight," he observed. "Just tired. New team, lots to learn." "Uh-huh." He set down his fork. "And how are your new teammates treating you?" Zara hesitated. Her father had taught her to be honest about threats, but she also knew his protective instincts. "Most of them are fine. There's always an adjustment period. What about the ones who aren't fine?" She looked up sharply. "What makes you think?" "Zara." His voice carried the patience of someone who'd interrogated enemy combatants. "I didn't raise you to lie to me, especially about your safety." "What's happening?" She sighed, pulling out her phone to show him the Instagram post. His expression darkened as he read through the comments. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "Anonymous posts, accidents at practice, little territorial games. They're testing you, seeing how you'll respond. So what do I do? Document everything. Screenshots, witnesses, times and dates. But don't react yet. Let them show their hand. And if it escalates?" Commander Washington's smile was razor-thin. "Then we'll discuss your options. But for now, you stay alert, and you stay smart." They picked the wrong girl to intimidate. As Zara headed upstairs to work on homework, she didn't notice the black pickup truck that had been parked across the street for the past hour, or the three figures inside watching her house with growing resentment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Jake Morrison was already planning his next move. The harassment escalated over the next 2 weeks like water building behind a dam. Tuesday morning, Zara found her cheer shoes missing from her gym locker. She'd left them there after practice the night before, and now they were gone. Coach Peterson had to lend her an old pair that were 2 sizes too big. "That's strange," Madison said, frowning. "Who would take someone's shoes?" "Maybe they fell out," Brittany suggested with fake concern. "These old lockers are so unreliable." Zara said nothing, but she noticed Jake Morrison smirking at her oversized shoes during their shared chemistry class. Wednesday brought a new low. Someone had left a banana on her car windshield with a note. "Monkey see, monkey do." Zara crumpled the paper and threw both items in the trash, but her hands shook with rage as she drove home. Thursday, she arrived at her locker to find it vandalized. Someone had scratched "Go home" into the metal door. When she reported it to Principal Martinez, he sighed heavily. "I'll have maintenance look at it, but vandalism is hard to prove without witnesses," he said. "Are you sure you want to make a big deal about this? Sometimes it's better to let these things blow over. So I should just accept someone destroying school property because of my race? Now, Zara, Let's not jump to conclusions about motivation. What other motivation would there be? Principal Martinez shifted uncomfortably. I'll have a talk with some students, see what I can find out. In the meantime, maybe keep a low profile? That afternoon, the real message came during lunch. Zara was walking past the football table when Tyler Knox stuck his foot out. She stumbled but caught herself. "Watch where you're going," he said loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear. "You tripped me." Tyler stood up, all 6'3" of him towering over her. "You calling me a liar?" The cafeteria went quiet. Jake Morrison and Brandon Mills flanked Tyler, creating a wall of Letterman jackets. "I'm saying you need to move your foot," Zara replied evenly. "Or what?" Jake stepped forward. "You gonna run crying to Daddy?" "Oh, wait. I heard he's some kind of military guy. Must be embarrassing having a daughter who can't handle high school." The words hit like a slap. Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. "At least my father taught me how to be a decent human being." Tyler's face flushed red. "You think you're better than us? Walking around here like you own the place?" "I think I belong here as much as anyone else." "No," Brandon finally spoke up, his voice shaky but determined to impress his friends. "You really don't." Several students had pulled out phones, sensing drama. Zara realized she was outnumbered and surrounded, with dozens of cameras potentially recording her humiliation. "We'll see about that," she said quietly, then walked away. Behind her, she heard Jake's voice carry across the silent cafeteria. "Yeah, walk away. That's what you people do best." The phrase "you people" echoed in her head for the rest of the day. Friday brought the incident that changed everything. It was game day, and the entire school buzzed with excitement for the homecoming matchup against their rivals. Zara had finally learned the routines well enough to move up to the second row, and despite everything, she felt a genuine thrill about performing in front of the crowd. She was walking toward the gym for final preparations when she noticed the puddle. Recent rain had created a muddy depression right outside the entrance, about 3 feet wide and 6 inches deep. Most students walked around it without thinking. Zara was texting her father about pickup arrangements when she heard footsteps behind her. She looked up just as Jake Morrison grabbed her left arm. "Hey, new girl. Got a message for you." Before she could react, Tyler Knox seized her right arm, while Brandon Mills positioned himself to block the view from the parking lot. "What are you doing?" Zara demanded, trying to pull free. "Teaching you a lesson about knowing your place," Jake snarled. They shoved her backward toward the puddle. Zara tried to dig her heels in, but her sneakers couldn't find purchase on the wet concrete. "Stop it!" she yelled, loud enough that several students turned to look. "Oops," Tyler said, as they gave her a final push. Zara hit the muddy water hard, her uniform skirt tearing on a piece of broken concrete hidden beneath the surface. Cold, dirty water soaked through her clothes as she scrambled to get up. The 3 boys stood over her, no longer bothering to hide their satisfaction. "Looks like you slipped," Jake said loudly. "How clumsy." Several cheerleaders had come outside, drawn by the commotion. Madison gasped and rushed forward. "Oh my God, Zara! Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Zara managed, but her voice cracked. Mud streaked her face and arms, and her torn uniform exposed her dignity along with her skin. Brittany Stevens pulled out her phone. "This is so going on Instagram. #EpicFail. "Don't you dare!" Madison snapped, but Zara knew it was too late. By tonight, half the school would see her humiliation. The football players were already walking away, high-fiving each other like they'd just scored a touchdown. "Nice uniform," Tyler called over his shoulder. "Really brings out your eyes." Jake laughed. "Maybe now you'll think twice about where you belong." Zara sat in the muddy water for another few seconds, not because she couldn't get up, but because she needed to memorize this moment. The feeling of cold mud seeping through her clothes. The sound of their laughter, the taste of humiliation in her mouth. Most importantly, the absolute certainty that this could never happen again. Madison helped her to her feet, offering tissues and apologies, but Zara barely heard her. She was thinking about her father's voice. Sometimes you have to create your own justice when the system fails you. Tonight, she would tell him everything. And tomorrow, the real fight would begin. Zara sat in her car in the school parking lot for 20 minutes after the game, still wearing her muddy, torn uniform. The Eagles had won 28-14, and she could hear celebration echoes from the field house, but the victory felt hollow. She'd watched the entire game from the sidelines in a borrowed uniform that hung loose on her frame, a constant reminder of her humiliation. Her phone buzzed with texts, some supportive from Madison and her Honor Society friends, others sharing links to social media posts that made her stomach turn. The video of her being shoved into the puddle had already been shared 43 times, with captions like, "Diversity hire gets reality check," and "When keeping it real goes wrong." Finally, she drove home. Commander Washington was waiting in the kitchen when she walked through the door, still in her stained uniform. He took one look at her and set down his coffee mug with deliberate precision. What happened? Zara had planned to ease into the conversation, maybe start with the minor incidents and work up to today. But seeing her father's controlled expression, the same look he'd worn when briefing his SEAL team before dangerous missions, she found herself telling him everything at once. 3 football players have been harassing me since I made the team. Jake Morrison, Tyler Knox, and Brandon Mills. It started with comments about how I don't belong, then missing shoes, vandalized locker, social media posts. Today they shoved me into a mud puddle in front of half the cheer squad and tore my uniform. Her father listened without interruption, his face growing progressively darker. When she finished, silence stretched between them for several heartbeats. "Show me the social media posts," he said quietly. Zara handed over her phone. Commander Washington scrolled through the comments, his jaw tightening with each swipe. And the school's response? Principal Martinez told me to keep a low profile and let it blow over. Something dangerous flickered in her father's eyes. Did he now? "Dad, I know what you're thinking, but..." "What am I thinking?" "That you want to go to the school and handle this yourself, but that'll just make things worse for me. They'll say I can't fight my own battles." Commander Washington studied his daughter with new respect. "You're right, but this can't continue. I know. That's why I need you to teach me." "Teach you what?" Zara met his gaze directly. "Everything. How to defend myself. How to fight back. How to make sure this never happens again." Her father was quiet for a long moment, weighing her words. "Physical confrontation should always be the last resort, Zara. Once you cross that line, they already crossed it. They put their hands on me today." "Fair point." He leaned back in his chair. "But there are other ways to handle bullies. Strategic ways. Ways that leave them no room to claim victimhood." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're David Washington's daughter. You're smarter than those boys. You're more disciplined. And you have something they don't." "What's that?" "Patience. And a father who spent 20 years learning how to neutralize threats." His smile was cold as winter steel. "Tell me everything you know about them. Their schedules, their habits, their weaknesses. We're going to plan this like a military operation." Meanwhile, across town at Jake Morrison's house, the 3 football players were celebrating their victory in more ways than one. "Did you see her face when she hit that water?" Brandon laughed, taking another drink from his stolen beer. "Priceless." "The best part was watching her try to act tough afterward," Tyler added, like she wasn't completely humiliated. Jake sat back in his gaming chair, feeling satisfied. "That should send the message. She doesn't belong here, and we're not going to pretend she does." Think she'll quit the team? Brandon asked hopefully. Nah, Tyler shook his head. Girls like her are stubborn. She'll probably double down, try to prove something. Then we'll have to get more creative, Jake said. Can't have her thinking she can just ignore us. What if she tells someone? Like her parents or whatever? Brandon's voice carried a note of worry. Tyler snorted. Tell them what? That she's clumsy and fell in a puddle? We didn't do anything wrong. Just 3 guys walking to practice who happened to be near when she tripped. Exactly, Jake agreed. And even if she tries to make something of it, who's gonna believe her over us? My dad practically built the new gymnasium. Tyler's dad is on the school board. We're Eagles royalty. And she's, he shrugged. Not, Brandon nodded eagerly. Plus, Coach Reynolds loves us. Principal Martinez isn't going to mess with the football program over some diversity cheerleader having an attitude problem. Speaking of which, Tyler pulled out his phone. Check this out. He showed them a group text thread with several other football players and their girlfriends. The video of Zara's humiliation was making the rounds, with commentary that grew cruder with each share. Tommy Williams said his girlfriend might quit the team if they don't do something about the problem, Tyler reported. Apparently, some of the girls are getting uncomfortable. Good, Jake said. Let them be uncomfortable. Maybe they'll pressure Coach Peterson to make some roster changes. What if that doesn't work? Brandon asked. Jake's expression hardened. Then we escalate. Make her so miserable she has no choice but to transfer schools. How far are we talking? Tyler leaned forward, interested. As far as it takes. This is our school, our team, our traditions. I'm not letting some outsider ruin what we've built here. Back at the Washington house, father and daughter were deep in strategic planning. The key to any successful operation is intelligence gathering, Commander Washington explained. You need to know your targets better than they know themselves. What motivates them? What scares them? What would hurt them most? Jake Morrison is the leader, Zara said. Star quarterback, rich family. His dad owns Morrison Construction. They built half the buildings in town. Vulnerabilities. He's being recruited by several colleges. Football is everything to him. Good. What about the others? Tyler Knox's father is on the school board. Tyler's not as smart as Jake, but he's more violent. Scholarship kid, I think. Football is his ticket out. And the third one? Brandon Mills. Follower, not a leader. Desperate to fit in with the other 2. Parents are divorced. Lives with his mom. Commander Washington nodded approvingly. You've been paying attention. Now, lesson 1. Never attack when your enemy expects it. They're feeling confident right now. Untouchable. That's when they make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that leave evidence. The kind that expose them for what they really are. He stood up. But first, we need to make sure you can protect yourself if this gets physical again. You mean fight training? I mean survival training. There's a difference. His expression grew serious. What happened today was just the beginning, Zara. They're going to escalate because you didn't break. Are you prepared for that? Zara thought about the mud, the laughter, the cameras recording her humiliation. I'm prepared for whatever it takes. Then we start tomorrow. But remember, we're not just teaching you to fight. We're teaching you to win. Saturday morning brought Zara's first lesson in what her father called tactical awareness. They started at 6 a.m. in the basement, which Commander Washington had converted into a training space years ago. Punching bags hung from reinforced ceiling beams, and thick mats covered the concrete floor. Forget everything you think you know about fighting, he began, circling her slowly. Movies, TV shows, video games, they're all garbage. Real combat is about efficiency, not entertainment. What do you mean? I mean you don't waste energy on fancy moves or dramatic gestures. You identify the threat, neutralize it, and get out. 3 seconds or less. He moved behind a punching bag, demonstrating. Throat strike to crush the windpipe, knee to the solar plexus to drop them. Heel stomp to break the instep so they can't chase you. Zara watched, memorizing the movements. But before any of that, you observe. You learn their patterns, their weaknesses, their blind spots. Sun Tzu said the supreme excellence is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So I study them first? You study everything. Where they go, when they go there, who they talk to, what they care about. Information is power, and power is leverage. They spent the next hour drilling basic defensive moves, how to break a grab, how to create distance, how to strike effectively despite her smaller size. Zara's muscles burned, but she pushed through the discomfort. Your advantage isn't strength, her father explained. It's speed, intelligence, and the element of surprise. They expect you to be a victim. Use that assumption against them. By 8 a.m., Zara was exhausted but energized. Her father handed her a water bottle and a notebook. Your homework starts now. I want detailed intelligence on all 3 targets. Where they park, what routes they take between classes, who they spend time with, everything. How do I do that without being obvious? Commander Washington smiled. You learn to be invisible. Watch from a distance. Listen to conversations. Become part of the background. Like a spy? Exactly like a spy. Monday morning, Zara began her reconnaissance mission. She arrived at school 30 minutes early, positioning herself in the library with a clear view of the student parking lot. Jake Morrison pulled up in his black Dodge Challenger at exactly 7:47 a.m., parking in the same spot near the gym entrance. Tyler Knox arrived 3 minutes later in a beat-up Ford truck, parking 2 rows back. Brandon Mills came last, dropped off by his mother in a silver Honda Civic. During lunch, she sat with her back to the football table but used her phone's camera to record their conversation patterns. Jake dominated most discussions. Tyler provided aggressive commentary, and Brandon mostly laughed at inappropriate moments. Between classes, she mapped their routes. Jake took the long way to avoid crowds, Tyler cut through the arts hallway where teachers rarely patrolled, and Brandon followed whichever friend was closest. After 3 days of observation, she had 15 pages of notes. "Excellent work," her father said that evening, reviewing her intelligence. "Now, what have you learned about their vulnerabilities?" Jake's entire identity is built around football and his reputation. He's being recruited by State University and Alabama. Tyler's family has money problems. I heard him arguing with his girlfriend about not being able to afford homecoming dinner. And Brandon, he's just desperate to belong somewhere. Good. Now, what would hurt each of them most? Zara considered this. Jake would be devastated if his college prospects disappeared. Tyler needs his scholarship, or he can't afford college at all. Brandon would crumble if the other 2 rejected him. And how might their college prospects disappear? If they got in serious trouble. Like arrested trouble. Commander Washington nodded approvingly. Or if evidence surfaced of behavior that college recruiters find unacceptable. What kind of evidence? That depends on what they're hiding. Everyone has secrets, Zara. The trick is finding them. Meanwhile, the 3 boys grew bolder in their harassment, convinced that Zara's continued presence meant she was weak. They began planning something bigger than mud puddles and stolen shoes. Back at home that evening, Zara was updating her intelligence files when her father knocked on her bedroom door. "How's the reconnaissance going?" "Good. I think I understand their dynamic now. Jake's the strategic thinker, Tyler's the enforcer, and Brandon's the weak link. Weak links can be useful. They're often the first to break under pressure." "Dad?" Zara looked up from her notebook. "What if they escalate before I'm ready to fight back?" Commander Washington's expression grew serious. "Then you remember what I taught you about survival. You protect yourself first, worry about strategy second. But, from what you've observed, what do you think their next move will be? Zara considered everything she'd learned about their patterns, their personalities, their motivations. Something bigger than the puddle incident. They want me to quit, so they'll try to humiliate me in a way that can't be ignored or dismissed. Then we'd better accelerate your training. Tomorrow, we start Phase 2. What's Phase 2? Her father's smile was sharp as a blade. Learning how to turn their strengths into weaknesses. Phase 1 targets Jake Morrison, Commander Washington explained over breakfast Thursday morning. He's the leader, so taking him down sends a message to the others. How? Her father slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photocopies of prescription bottles and a small plastic bag containing white pills. Where did you get these? Zara asked, alarmed. The nurse's office has poor security. These are expired anxiety medications that were supposed to be disposed of properly. His voice was matter-of-fact. The bottles still have patient information, but the names have been obscured. You want me to plant drugs in his truck? I want you to create a situation where Jake Morrison faces real consequences for the first time in his privileged life. College scouts don't recruit students with drug possession charges. Zara stared at the pills, feeling the weight of the decision. This could ruin his entire future, just like he's trying to ruin yours. The difference is, you didn't start this war. But what if? Zara. Her father's voice was gentle but firm. These boys shoved you into a mud puddle and humiliated you in front of your peers. They've made it clear they won't stop until you're gone. Sometimes, the only way to deal with a bully is to hit them where it hurts most. She nodded slowly, tucking the folder into her backpack. Friday afternoon, Zara waited in the parking lot after school, positioned behind a van with a clear view of Jake's Challenger. Most students had left, but football practice wouldn't start for another 30 minutes. Perfect timing. Jake's truck sat alone in the premium parking spots reserved for senior athletes. Zara had watched him for a week and knew his routine. He always went to the weight room before practice, leaving his truck unlocked because nobody would be stupid enough to mess with it. She approached casually, as if walking to her own car parked 3 rows away. When she was sure no one was watching, she quickly opened the passenger door of the Challenger. The truck's interior smelled like expensive cologne and arrogance. Zara slipped the prescription bottle under the passenger seat, positioning it so it would be visible to anyone who looked, but not immediately obvious. The loose pills went into the center console, scattered among spare change and old receipts. Her hands were shaking as she closed the door and walked away. 2 hours later, during football practice, an anonymous tip was called into the school's drug hotline. The caller reported suspicious activity around Jake Morrison's vehicle and suggested someone should investigate before the student drove home under the influence. Principal Martinez and the school resource officer, Deputy Collins, approached Jake during practice. "Morrison, we need to search your vehicle," Deputy Collins announced. "What? Why?" Jake's confidence faltered for the first time since Zara had known him. "Anonymous tip about drug activity. Probably nothing, but we have to check." Jake's teammates gathered around, drawn by the commotion. Coach Reynolds jogged over from the other end of the field. "What's the problem here?" "Just a routine search, Coach. Should only take a few minutes." But it didn't take a few minutes. Deputy Collins found the prescription bottle almost immediately, and the loose pills in the console sealed Jake's fate. "Whose prescription is this?" the deputy asked, holding up the bottle with the obscured label. "I don't know. I've never seen that before in my life." Jake's voice cracked with panic. "You're saying someone planted drugs in your unlocked truck?" "Yes. I mean, maybe? I don't know how they got there." Principal Martinez sighed heavily. "Jake, this is serious. These appear to be controlled substances." "I'm not using drugs. Ask anyone. Test me right now." That's not the issue. Possession is possession, regardless of whether you consumed them. Coach Reynolds stepped forward. Now, hold on, Principal Martinez. Jake's one of our best players. There has to be some mistake. Coach, I have to follow protocol. Jake, I'm suspending you pending investigation. Deputy Collins will handle the legal aspects. The color drained from Jake's face. Suspended? But we have playoffs coming up. College scouts are coming to watch. Should have thought about that before bringing these to school, Deputy Collins said, placing the evidence in a plastic bag. This is insane. Someone's setting me up. Who would do that? Principal Martinez asked. Jake's eyes darted around the circle of faces surrounding him. His teammates, his coaches, school officials. For the first time, he looked genuinely frightened. I don't know. But this isn't mine. From the bleachers, where she was stretching with the cheer squad, Zara watched the scene unfold. Madison leaned over and whispered, "What do you think is happening?" "Looks like Jake's in trouble," Zara replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Drug trouble, from what I can hear. That's crazy. Jake doesn't seem like the type." "You never really know people," Zara said quietly. Across the field, Jake was being led away from practice in handcuffs. Tyler Knox and Brandon Mills watched in stunned silence as their leader was placed in the back of a police cruiser. "This is messed up," Tyler muttered. "Jake doesn't do that stuff." "Maybe someone really did plant them," Brandon said nervously. "Who would do that?" Brandon's eyes found Zara on the sidelines. She was going through cheer motions with the rest of the squad, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding on the football field. "I don't know," he said slowly. "But Jake made a lot of enemies lately." That evening, the local news reported the arrest of a star high school quarterback on possession charges. Jake's father hired an expensive lawyer within hours, but the damage was already done. State University withdrew their recruitment offer that night, and Alabama followed suit the next morning. At the Washington house, Zara and her father watched the news coverage over dinner. "Phase 1 complete," Commander Washington said quietly. "I should feel good about this," Zara said, pushing food around her plate. "But I just feel empty." "That's normal. Justice isn't always satisfying in the moment. But ask yourself this. How many other students won't be bullied because Jake Morrison learned there are consequences to his actions?" Zara nodded, thinking about all the kids who might avoid the humiliation she'd endured. "What's phase 2? Tyler Knox. And this time, we're going to let him destroy himself." Jake's arrest sent shockwaves through Westfield High. By Monday morning, everyone knew the star quarterback was facing serious charges and had lost his college scholarships. The football team looked shell-shocked, and Tyler Knox had stepped into the leadership vacuum with barely contained rage. "This is all wrong," Tyler said loudly during lunch, his voice carrying across the cafeteria. "Jake doesn't do that stuff. Someone set him up." His girlfriend, Ashley, rubbed his shoulder soothingly. "Maybe the charges won't stick. Maybe he'll get his scholarships back." "No way. Colleges don't take chances on players with drug records." Tyler's fist clenched around his sandwich. "Someone destroyed his life, and I'm gonna find out who." Zara sat 3 tables away, eating quietly while listening to every word. She could feel Tyler's eyes scanning the cafeteria, looking for suspects, for someone to blame. That afternoon, Commander Washington reviewed the intelligence files on Tyler Knox. "Family's struggling financially," he noted. "Father works construction. Mother's a part-time secretary. Tyler needs that football scholarship, or he's looking at community college and student loans. So we target his scholarship chances too?" Her father nodded grimly. "But Tyler's different from Jake. He's not entitled. He's desperate. And desperate people are more dangerous." "What do you mean?" "I mean Tyler's the type who'll escalate to violence when cornered. We need to be very careful how we handle this." He pulled out a small vaping device and several small bags. Your intelligence gathering paid off. Tyler's been selling vapes to underclassmen behind the gym. Zara stared at the evidence. How did you? I followed him yesterday after school. Watched him make 3 sales to freshman students. $50 each for devices that cost him $20 online. So he's already breaking the law. Exactly. We don't need to plant evidence this time. We just need to make sure the right people find out what he's already doing. Zara felt conflicted. Dad, what if this ruins his whole future? His family really needs that scholarship money. Commander Washington's expression grew serious. Zara, this is the hardest part of any operation. Questioning whether your actions are justified. But remember what Tyler did to you. Remember how he laughed when you were covered in mud. I know, but... And remember that he's been selling nicotine to 14-year-olds for profit. Tyler Knox made his choices long before we got involved. That evening, Zara wrestled with the decision. She thought about Tyler's desperation, his family's financial struggles, the way he'd looked when Jake was arrested. But then she remembered his hands grabbing her arms, his voice saying, "You people," the sound of his laughter as she sat in that mud puddle. Tuesday afternoon, she made her choice. During Tyler's usual selling time behind the gym, Zara positioned herself in the nearby art building with her phone camera ready. She watched Tyler complete 2 transactions with freshman boys, clearly exchanging money for vaping devices. She recorded everything. Wednesday morning, she anonymously submitted the video to Principal Martinez's office, along with screenshots showing Tyler's Venmo transactions with timestamps that matched the video evidence. The confrontation happened during third-period chemistry. Principal Martinez and Deputy Collins pulled Tyler out of class, and 20 minutes later, they were searching his locker. They found 12 vaping devices, small bags of nicotine pods, and nearly $300 in cash wrapped in a rubber band. Tyler's protests echoed down the hallway. "This is a setup! Someone's targeting our team!" "Mr. Knox, we have video evidence of you selling these devices to minors," Principal Martinez replied firmly. "This isn't a setup. This is you being held accountable. You don't understand. Your family needed you to make better choices. You're suspended pending expulsion hearings. The police will handle the criminal charges for distributing nicotine products to minors." By lunch, word had spread throughout the school. Tyler Knox, the linebacker being recruited by 3 state universities, was facing criminal charges and expulsion. Ashley found Zara at her locker after school. "Did you hear about Tyler?" "Yeah, it's all over school. Pretty shocking. He's saying someone set him up, that someone's targeting the football players." Ashley studied Zara's face carefully. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Zara met her gaze steadily. "Why would I know anything about Tyler's illegal business?" "I don't know. It's just weird timing, with Jake getting arrested and now this. Maybe they're just not as perfect as everyone thought they were." Ashley's expression hardened. "Tyler's going to lose everything because of this?" The words hit Zara harder than she expected. She thought about Tyler's desperate face, his family's financial struggles, the ripple effects of her actions. "That's really sad," she said quietly. But Tyler made his own choices. As Ashley walked away, Zara felt the weight of what she'd done. Justice, her father had said, wasn't always satisfying. Sometimes it just felt heavy. But there was still one more target to handle. And Brandon Mills was already starting to crack under the pressure. With Jake expelled and Tyler facing criminal charges, Brandon Mills had reached his breaking point. Tuesday evening, he made the calls that would change everything. "We need to meet," he told Jake over the phone. "All 3 of us. I figured out who's been doing this to us." "Doing what to us?" Jake's voice was bitter from his house arrest. "Come on, Jake. You really think it's a coincidence that we all got busted right after we messed with that black cheerleader?" There was silence on the other end. Then, you think she's behind this? I know she is. Think about it. First, you get arrested for drugs right after we pushed her in the mud. Then, Tyler gets caught selling vapes. Someone's been watching us, gathering evidence. That's impossible. She's just some high school girl. Is she? You ever notice how she never fights back? How she just takes everything we do with that calm look on her face? Like she's planning something? Another long pause. Meet me at Tyler's house in an hour. I'll figure out how to get there without my parents knowing. An hour later, the three boys sat in Tyler's garage, their usual swagger replaced by a mixture of fear and rage. This is insane, Tyler said after Brandon laid out his theory. You're saying some cheerleader masterminded our downfall? I'm saying someone did, and she's the only person with motive, Brandon replied. Think about it. Who else would want to destroy us? Jake leaned forward, his expression dark. Even if you're right, what are we supposed to do about it? I'm under house arrest, Tyler's facing charges, and you're about to be expelled. That's exactly why we need to handle this, Brandon said, his voice gaining confidence as desperation made him bold. If she's been playing games with us, then it's time to show her what happens when you mess with the wrong people. What are you talking about? Tyler asked. I'm talking about ending this. We find her, corner her somewhere private, and get some answers. And then what? Jake's voice was dangerously quiet. Brandon's eyes glittered with malice. Then we make sure she understands that some battles aren't worth fighting. Tyler nodded slowly. I like it. She wants to play dirty? Let's show her how dirty we can get. This is our chance to take back control, Brandon continued, feeding off their growing anger. She thinks she's smart, thinks she can destroy our lives and get away with it. Time to teach her that actions have consequences. Jake pulled out his phone. First, we need to know where she lives. Can't corner her at school with all the cameras and witnesses. How do we find that out? Brandon asked. Easy. School directory has everyone's addresses for emergency contacts. Tyler grabbed his laptop. My mom still has access to the parent portal from when she was PTA treasurer. 20 minutes later, they had what they needed. 1247 Maple Street, a quiet residential neighborhood about 15 minutes from school. Perfect, Jake said, studying the address on Google Street View. Looks like a normal suburban house. Probably no security cameras. Nice and isolated. Jake stood up, his fists clenched. This ends tonight. She thinks she can ruin our lives and just walk away? Time to show her what real consequences look like. What if she calls the police? Brandon asked, suddenly nervous. She won't get the chance, Jake replied coldly. We do this quick and clean. Get our answers, make our point, and leave. What if her parents wake up? Tyler wondered. Then we improvise, Jake said. But one way or another, this stops tonight. The three boys spent the next hour planning their confrontation, driven by desperation and the dangerous logic of cornered animals. Remember, Jake said as they prepared to leave, we're not there to hurt her. We're there to get the truth and make sure she knows the price of crossing us. Right, Tyler agreed. Just a conversation. A very serious conversation. Brandon nodded, trying to convince himself they weren't about to do something they'd all regret. Zara had developed a routine of evening walks around her neighborhood, partly for exercise and partly to clear her head after the stress of the past few weeks. Her father had encouraged it, saying that maintaining normal activities was important for psychological health during operations. Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m., she set out on her usual route through the quiet suburban streets. The sun had set an hour ago, and most families were settling in for the night. Streetlights cast long shadows between the houses, and the only sounds were distant television shows and the occasional car passing on the main road. She was 3 blocks from home, walking past Riverside Park, when she heard the car engine slow down behind her. Zara's training kicked in immediately. She didn't turn around, but used her peripheral vision and the reflection in a parked car's window to assess the threat. A dark pickup truck was crawling along the curb, matching her pace. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. When you're being followed, never let them choose the location of confrontation. Either lose them or force the encounter on your terms. The park offered too many hiding spots and no witnesses. Better to stay on the street, where porch lights and potential help were nearby. She picked up her pace slightly, heading toward the next intersection where she could turn back toward home. The truck's doors slammed shut behind her. "Hey, Zara!" She recognized Jake's voice immediately. Her pulse spiked, but she kept walking, pulling out her phone to call her father. "Don't even think about it!" Tyler's voice came from her right side. He'd circled around through the park and was now blocking her path to the intersection. Brandon appeared from behind a parked car on her left, completing the triangle. They'd planned this ambush carefully. "We need to talk," Jake said, approaching from behind. "And this time, Daddy's not here to protect you." Zara stopped walking and turned to face them, keeping all three in her line of sight. The nearest house was 50 yards away, and the porch light was off. No witnesses. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "We want answers," Jake replied, stepping closer. "We know you're behind everything that's happened to us. I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying!" Tyler's face was flushed with anger. "First, Jake gets busted for drugs right after we teach you a lesson. Then I get caught selling vapes. You think we're stupid? I think you got yourselves in trouble and need someone to blame." Brandon's voice shook with fear and anger. "You destroyed their lives. Jake lost his scholarships. Tyler's facing charges. What did we ever do to deserve this?" "Actions have consequences," Zara replied calmly. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you put your hands on me." The words hit like a slap. Jake's expression darkened with recognition. "So you admit it? You've been planning this whole thing." "I admit that bullies eventually face justice, one way or another." Tyler took another step forward, his fists clenched. "Justice? You think ruining our futures is justice for some stupid prank?" "Stupid prank?" Zara's calm facade cracked slightly. "You humiliated me in front of half the school. You tore my uniform. You made me feel powerless and afraid." "Good," Jake snarled. "Maybe now you understand how we feel. The difference is, you chose to be bullies. I chose to fight back." "Well, congratulations," Tyler said. "You won. We're all screwed. Happy now?" "Not yet." The admission hung in the air like a challenge. Jake's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What else do you want from us? I want you to understand that there are people in this world you can't intimidate. People who won't be victims just because you think they should be." Brandon stepped forward, his face twisted with desperation. "We get it, okay? You're tough. You're smart. You beat us. Can we just call it even now?" "Even?" Zara's voice rose slightly. "You think this is even? You three against one girl, cornering me in the dark like cowards?" "We're not cowards!" Tyler exploded, lunging toward her. Zara was ready. She sidestepped Tyler's charge and drove her elbow into his ribs as he passed. He stumbled, gasping, and she immediately pivoted to face Jake, who was rushing her from behind. Her father's training took over completely. Strike fast, strike hard, create distance. Jake reached for her, but Zara ducked under his arms and drove her fist into his solar plexus. As he doubled over, she brought her knee up toward his face, but he managed to twist away at the last second. Brandon tried to grab her from the side, but Zara spun and caught his wrist, using his momentum to flip him over her hip. He hit the asphalt hard, crying out in pain. Tyler had recovered and came at her again, this time more cautiously. He was bigger and stronger, but Zara was faster and better trained. She feinted left, then struck right, her palm striking his nose with a sharp crack. Blood spurted as he staggered backward. Jake, still winded but furious, pulled something from his pocket. A knife. "Enough games," he gasped. "You want to play war? Let's play war!" The blade gleamed under the streetlight as he advanced. Zara's mind went crystal clear, every lesson her father had taught her about weapon defense flooding back. "Jake, don't!" Brandon called out from the ground. "This is crazy!" But Jake was beyond reason, driven by desperation and rage. He lunged with the knife, aiming for her midsection. Zara caught his wrist with both hands, using his forward momentum to redirect the blade away from her body. She twisted sharply, applying pressure to his thumb joint until he cried out and dropped the weapon. Before he could recover, she drove her knee into his stomach and followed with an uppercut that snapped his head back. Jake collapsed, semi-conscious and bleeding. 3 opponents down in less than 30 seconds. Zara stood over them, breathing hard but unhurt, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. These boys had cornered her in the dark with a knife, and she'd beaten all 3 of them. In the distance, she heard sirens approaching. Someone had called the police. Time to face the consequences, all of them. The first police cruiser arrived within 3 minutes, its flashing lights cutting through the darkness of the suburban street. Officer Martinez stepped out, hand resting on her weapon as she assessed the scene. 3 teenage boys on the ground in various states of injury, 1 girl standing calmly nearby, and a knife glinting on the asphalt. "Nobody move!" she commanded. "Hands where I can see them!" Zara raised her hands slowly. "Officer, my name is Zara Washington. These 3 boys cornered me, and one of them pulled a knife. I defended myself." Tyler was sitting up, blood streaming from his broken nose. "She attacked us. We were just trying to talk to her." "With a knife?" Officer Martinez asked, pointing to the weapon near Jake's unconscious form. "That's not ours," Brandon protested, struggling to his feet with a grimace. "She must have planted it." A second cruiser arrived, followed quickly by an ambulance. Officer Martinez's partner, Deputy Collins, began securing the scene while paramedics checked on Jake, who was groggily coming to consciousness. "I need to call my father," Zara said calmly. "You're not calling anyone until we sort this out," Officer Martinez replied. "What happened here?" "They followed me from my house and cornered me. They threatened my family earlier this week, and tonight they came to make good on those threats." "That's a lie." Tyler spat blood onto the sidewalk. "She's been setting us up for weeks. She got Jake arrested, got me busted for selling vapes, and now she's trying to frame us for assault." Deputy Collins looked up from where he was photographing the knife. "This matches the description of a blade stolen from Morrison's garage last week. Family reported it missing." Jake's eyes went wide as he sat up against the ambulance bumper. "I didn't steal anything. Someone's been planning this." At that moment, Commander Washington's truck roared around the corner. He'd been monitoring police scanners and recognized his daughter's name in the dispatch. He parked quickly and approached the scene, his military bearing evident in every step. "Sir, this is a crime scene," Officer Martinez warned. "That's my daughter," he replied, pulling out his ID. "Commander David Washington, retired Navy SEAL. What's her status?" "She appears uninjured. Claims she was attacked by these 3 boys." Commander Washington surveyed the scene with professional eyes. 3 larger opponents down, his daughter standing calmly. A weapon that clearly didn't belong to her. Pride and concern warred in his expression. "Zara, are you hurt?" "No, Dad, I'm fine." "Did you follow protocol?" "Yes, sir. I tried to avoid confrontation, called for help when I couldn't, and used minimum necessary force when cornered." Officer Martinez frowned. "Protocol? What kind of protocol?" "Self-defense training," Commander Washington explained. "I've been teaching my daughter basic protection techniques since these boys started harassing her at school." Harassing her? How? Before Zara could answer, Tyler exploded. This is insane. She's been destroying our lives. Jake lost his college scholarships because of her. Because he brought drugs to school, Zara replied evenly. Drugs you planted. Prove it. Deputy Collins stepped forward. We're going to need everyone to come down to the station for statements. This is a complex situation with multiple allegations. My daughter won't be answering questions without a lawyer present, Commander Washington said firmly. Dad, it's okay. I have nothing to hide. Jake struggled to his feet, supported by a paramedic. You hear that? She has nothing to hide because she planned everything perfectly. Planned what exactly? Officer Martinez asked. Getting revenge on us for putting her in her place at school. The words hung in the air like an admission of guilt. Commander Washington's expression hardened. So you admit to targeting my daughter at school? Brandon, realizing Jake's mistake, tried to backtrack. It wasn't like that. It was just normal high school stuff. Normal? Zara's voice carried an edge of anger for the first time. Shoving me into a mud puddle and tearing my uniform in front of everyone was normal? You didn't belong on our team, Tyler shouted. You never belonged at our school. Officer Martinez exchanged glances with her partner. The racial undertones of the boys' statements were becoming impossible to ignore. I think we need to have some very serious conversations downtown, she said, about harassment, assault with a deadly weapon, and civil rights violations. Civil rights? Brandon's voice cracked with panic. Targeting someone because of their race is a federal crime, son. And from what I'm hearing, that's exactly what happened here. The three boys looked at each other with growing horror as the legal implications sank in. What had started as harassment over a cheer squad position was now potentially a federal hate crime investigation. Commander Washington placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. Officer Martinez, my daughter has been documenting harassment for weeks. We have evidence of escalating threats and racial targeting. Tonight was the inevitable culmination. We'll need to see that evidence. You'll have it within the hour. As the boys were loaded into separate police cars, Zara finally allowed herself to breathe. The confrontation was over, but the real battle for justice was just beginning. The weeks following the arrest transformed Zara's life in ways she never could have anticipated. What had started as a personal fight for dignity became a national conversation about bullying, racial harassment, and justice in American schools. The first major shift came when the FBI opened a federal hate crime investigation. Agent Sarah Kim arrived at the Washington house 3 days after the attack, her badge and serious demeanor making the stakes crystal clear. The knife attack was just the culmination, Agent Kim explained to Zara and her father in their living room. We've been building a case around the systematic harassment based on race. This goes beyond assault. It's a federal civil rights violation. Commander Washington nodded grimly. What do you need from us? Everything. Every text message. Every social media post. Every witness statement. We're going to build an airtight case that sends a message. Meanwhile, the three boys' families were scrambling to manage the crisis. Jake Morrison's father hired Harrison Wells, the most expensive criminal defense attorney in the state, for $50,000. Tyler Knox's family mortgaged their house to afford legal representation. Brandon Mills's mother worked extra shifts to pay for a public defender. The media attention began with a local news report, but exploded when video of the fight surfaced. Someone's Ring doorbell camera had captured the entire confrontation, showing 3 large boys cornering one girl, Jake pulling a knife, and Zara systematically defeating all 3 attackers. "Teen girl fights off racist attackers," screamed the national headlines. Cable news programs ran the footage on loop. Social media exploded with support for Zara and outrage at the boys' actions. 2 weeks after the arrest, CNN's Anderson Cooper interviewed Zara and her father in their living room. "Zara, When those 3 boys cornered you that night, what was going through your mind? Cooper asked. That this was what my father had been preparing me for, Zara replied calmly. Not the fight itself, but the moment when I had to choose between being a victim or standing up for myself. Commander Washington, you taught your daughter to fight. Do you have any regrets about that? David Washington's expression was steel. My only regret is that it was necessary. But I'd rather have a daughter who can defend herself than one who suffers in silence. The interview drew 20 million viewers and sparked national debates about self-defense, parental responsibility, and systemic racism in schools. Back in Westfield, the community was deeply divided. Many residents supported Zara and praised her courage. Others believed the boys were being unfairly prosecuted for typical teenage behavior. The school district found itself under federal investigation. Principal Martinez was placed on administrative leave pending review of how the harassment was handled. Coach Reynolds was fired immediately when investigators discovered he'd been aware of the boys' behavior and failed to report it. 3 months into the legal process, plea negotiations began in earnest. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages planning the attack, social media posts full of racial slurs, witness testimony about months of harassment, and the ring camera footage showing the assault. Jake Morrison's attorney, Harrison Wells, met with DA Rebecca Chen in her office on a rainy Tuesday morning. My client is willing to plead to simple assault, Wells offered. No hate crime charges. He serves 18 months, and this all goes away quietly. Chen laughed coldly. Your client brought a knife to attack a 16-year-old girl because of her race. We have him on video. The plea is assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, and federal hate crime violations. 4 years minimum. That's his entire future. He should have considered that before he decided to terrorize a child. Wells tried a different approach. What if he makes a public apology? Shows remorse? Has he shown remorse? Wells was quiet for a long moment. He's struggling with the situation. Agent Kim intercepted his jailhouse calls yesterday. He called Miss Washington the N-word 6 times and promised to finish the job when he gets out. Does that sound like remorse to you? The attorney's face fell. His client's case had just become hopeless. Similar conversations played out with Tyler and Brandon's lawyers. Tyler's communications were full of violent fantasies about revenge. Only Brandon showed genuine remorse, writing letters of apology and participating in racial sensitivity counseling. The community pressure intensified as the trial date approached. Westfield High's football program was suspended for the season. The school board held emergency meetings about new anti-harassment policies. Property values in the district began declining as families considered moving away from the negative publicity. Jake Morrison's family felt the economic impact most severely. Morrison Construction lost 3 major contracts when clients refused to work with the company. Jake's mother, who had worked as a real estate agent, found clients unwilling to be represented by the mother of that racist boy. Tyler Knox's father was laid off from his construction job when the company decided his association with the case was bad for business. His mother increased her hours at the diner, but the family was facing bankruptcy. Brandon Mills's divorced mother struggled most of all. As a hospital worker, she faced constant questions and judgment from colleagues. Several of Brandon's extended family members cut off contact, ashamed to be associated with the case. The boys themselves were held in separate facilities to prevent coordination of their stories. Jake, housed in the county adult lockup due to the weapons charge, quickly gained a reputation for his racist attitude and frequent disciplinary problems. Tyler, in the juvenile facility, spent most of his time in protective custody after several fights with other inmates who had seen the news coverage. Brandon, also in juvenile detention, participated in counseling programs, and wrote dozens of letters of apology that his lawyer hoped might influence sentencing. 6 months after the attack, the media attention had created a documentary deal, book offers, and speaking engagement requests for Zara. She turned them all down, focusing instead on her grades and her new role as student body president, a position she won in a landslide election. The plea agreements were finalized in February. Jake would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a recommended sentence of 4 years. Tyler would accept 3 years for his role as primary enforcer. Brandon, with his cooperation and demonstrated remorse, would plead to 18 months in juvenile detention. The final court session took place on a cold March morning. The courthouse was surrounded by protesters, some supporting Zara and demanding justice, others claiming the boys were being unfairly punished. Media trucks lined the street for blocks. Inside, Judge Patricia Reynolds reviewed the case file one final time before the packed courtroom. She had served on the bench for 30 years, handling everything from white-collar fraud to murder cases. But the Westfield High hate crime case had drawn more attention than anything in her career. We're here for the sentencing of defendants Morrison, Knox, and Mills, who have pled guilty to charges of assault, conspiracy, and federal hate crime violations, she announced. Zara sat beside D.A. Chen, wearing a simple blue dress her mother had bought for the occasion. Behind her, Commander Washington watched with military bearing, flanked by supporters from the school and community. Madison Clark and several other cheerleaders had driven down to show support. Across the aisle, the 3 boys sat with their attorneys, their families filling the rows behind them. Jake's parents looked aged by stress and public humiliation. Tyler's family appeared financially and emotionally drained. Brandon's mother wept quietly, having already lost her son to the justice system. D.A. Chen rose to deliver her final arguments. Your Honor, this case represents more than teenage bullying gone wrong. The defendants engaged in a systematic campaign of racial harassment that culminated in a premeditated assault with a deadly weapon. The evidence shows months of planning, coordination, and escalating violence driven by hatred. She opened a thick folder. Text messages between the defendants refer to Miss Washington as that N-word cheerleader and discuss various ways to get rid of her. Social media posts show them encouraging others to harass her. Witness testimony confirms they made her life miserable for months before the final attack. Harrison Wells, Jake's attorney, attempted damage control. Your Honor, my clients were confused, angry teenagers who made poor choices. They've already lost their college opportunities, their futures, their reputations. They've learned their lesson through consequences. Have they? Chen countered, pulling out transcripts. Yesterday, we intercepted jailhouse communications where Mr. Morrison refers to the victim using racial slurs and promises to finish what we started upon release. Mr. Knox has made similar statements about getting revenge. The courtroom murmured with disgust. Jake's father visibly sagged in his chair, realizing his son had just sealed his own fate. Judge Reynolds studied the documents with growing displeasure. Mr. Morrison, stand up. Jake rose shakily, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the expensive varsity jacket he'd once worn with pride. In 30 years on this bench, I've seen many young people make mistakes and learn from them. But what you and your co-defendants did goes far beyond teenage error. You targeted a fellow student because of her race, escalated that harassment over months, and ultimately attacked her with a deadly weapon while making threats against her family. Wells tried to interrupt. Your Honor, if I may address— You may not. Judge Reynolds's voice cut like steel. Mr. Morrison, you were the ringleader of this conspiracy. You planned the attack, brought the weapon, and led the assault. Your recent communications show no remorse, only continued racial hatred and threats of violence. Jake's legs seemed to give out slightly. "Please, Your Honor, I made a mistake. Multiple mistakes, over months. With calculated malicious intent and clear racial animus." She consulted her sentencing guidelines. "I sentence you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation with mandatory racial sensitivity counseling. You are permanently banned from all Westfield School District properties and prohibited from contacting the victim or her family." Jake's mother burst into sobs behind him. His father sat stone-faced, staring at the complete destruction of his son's future and his family's reputation. "Mr. Knox, stand up." Tyler rose, his hands visibly trembling. His family couldn't afford an attorney like Jake's, and his public defender looked overwhelmed by the federal attention. "You were an active participant in this conspiracy. Your communications show you encouraged violence, used racial epithets repeatedly, and physically participated in the assault. 3 years state prison, 2 years probation, with the same counseling requirements and contact restrictions." Tyler's knees buckled slightly. His girlfriend Ashley, who had stood by him through the early stages, had broken up with him months ago when the jailhouse recordings became public. "Mr. Mills." Brandon could barely stand, his face pale and streaked with tears. Unlike his co-defendants, he had spent months in genuine remorse, writing letters, participating in counseling, and cooperating fully with investigators. "You were the follower in this group, but you participated willingly in racial harassment and assault. However, your cooperation with the investigation, your participation in counseling programs, and your demonstrated remorse distinguish your case. 18 months in juvenile detention, followed by 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service with racial justice organizations." Brandon's mother wept with relief. 18 months was devastating, but it wasn't the years-long sentence she'd feared. Judge Reynolds turned to address the packed courtroom. "Let this case serve as a warning to every parent, every school administrator, and every young person watching. Hate crimes will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law in my jurisdiction." The defendants' futures were destroyed not by their victims' response to their attacks, but by their own choices to engage in racially motivated violence. She looked directly at Zara. "Miss Washington, would you like to make a victim impact statement?" Zara stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom. The girl who had been shoved into a mud puddle 8 months ago was gone. In her place stood a young woman who had faced hatred and emerged stronger. "I didn't want any of this to happen," she began, her voice clear and carrying to every corner of the silent courtroom. "I wanted to make the cheer team, get good grades, and have a normal high school experience. These defendants took that choice away from me when they decided I didn't belong in their world." She turned to face the 3 boys directly. "You thought you could intimidate me into disappearing. You thought your threats and violence would make me quit and transfer schools. Instead, you taught me that standing up to bullies is the only way to stop them from hurting other people." Her voice grew stronger. "I hope prison teaches you what empathy and common decency couldn't. I hope you learn that every person deserves respect regardless of their race. And I hope that when you get out, you spend the rest of your lives making up for the hatred you've spread." Jake's eyes blazed with unrepentant fury. Tyler stared at the floor in shame. Brandon looked genuinely broken by remorse and the consequences of his choices. "This court is adjourned." As the gavel fell, the courtroom erupted in controlled chaos. Reporters surged toward the exits to file their stories. The defendants were led away in handcuffs, their families following in various states of grief, anger, and devastation. Outside the courthouse, Zara and her father stood on the steps as cameras flashed around them and reporters shouted questions. "Miss Washington, how do you feel about the sentences?" called a CNN correspondent. "I feel like justice was served," Zara replied confidently. "These boys learned that actions have consequences, no matter who your family is, how much money you have, or what you think you're entitled to. What message do you have for other students facing harassment? Document everything. Tell trusted adults. And remember that you have the right to defend yourself and demand justice." Commander Washington wrapped his arm around his daughter's shoulders as they prepared to leave. "I'm proud of her for standing up for herself, and for every student who'll never have to face what she faced because of her courage." As they walked toward their car through the crowd of supporters and media, Zara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she'd carried for almost a year. The fight was finally over, and justice had prevailed. The real victory wasn't just the prison sentences or the vindication in court. It was the knowledge that she had faced hatred and violence with courage, intelligence, and determination, and emerged victorious. 1 year later, Zara Washington stood at the podium in Westfield High's newly renovated auditorium, addressing an assembly about anti-bullying and racial justice. The irony wasn't lost on her, speaking in the same school where 3 boys had once tried to destroy her for the color of her skin. "A year ago, I thought my biggest challenge would be learning cheer routines," she began, her voice carrying easily through the packed auditorium. "I never imagined I'd have to fight for my right to exist in this school without harassment." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. In the front row sat Principal Williams, Martinez's replacement, along with the new coaching staff and school board members. The old guard that had enabled the harassment was gone, replaced by administrators committed to creating a safer environment. "But I learned something important through all of this," Zara continued. "Bullies only have the power you give them. When you stand up for yourself and demand justice, they lose that power." After the assembly, Madison Clark found Zara in the hallway. Now team captain, Madison had helped transform the cheerleading program into one focused on inclusivity and school spirit, rather than social hierarchy. "That was amazing," Madison said, beaming. "Did you see how quiet everyone got when you talked about the knife?" "They needed to hear it," Zara replied. "Some people still think what happened to me was just boys being boys. Not anymore, they don't. Not after seeing Jake Morrison on the news last week." The news coverage had been devastating for Jake's image. He'd been involved in a racial incident at the state prison, attacking a black inmate and earning additional charges. His original 4-year sentence had been extended to 7 years. The Golden Boy quarterback was now a career criminal with a white supremacist reputation. "Have you heard anything about Tyler?" Madison asked. "He's been writing letters," Zara said, "apologizing, asking for forgiveness. My dad thinks he might actually be changing." Tyler Knox had taken a different path in prison. After being beaten up by other inmates who recognized him from the news, he'd requested protective custody and begun participating in educational programs. His letters to Zara, which she read but didn't respond to, showed genuine remorse and a growing understanding of his actions' impact. And Brandon? He gets out next month. His mom says he wants to transfer schools and start over somewhere else. Brandon Mills had served his full 18-month sentence and completed his community service working with racial justice organizations. Unlike his former friends, he'd used his time in detention to educate himself about racism and its effects. His transformation appeared genuine, though Zara remained cautious about trusting it. That evening, Zara found her father in the basement gym, working out as he did every night. The space had evolved since her training began. New equipment, photos of her various achievements, and newspaper clippings documenting their victory. "How did the assembly go?" he asked, pausing his workout. "Good. Kids are listening. Some of them shared their own stories about harassment afterward." Commander Washington smiled with pride. "You've become quite the speaker. Harvard's going to be lucky to have you." Zara had been accepted to Harvard with a full academic scholarship. Her essay about overcoming racial harassment and standing up for justice impressing the admissions committee. She'd also received scholarship offers from 12 other universities, all eager to recruit the girl who'd become a symbol of courage and resilience. "I keep thinking about what you said that first night," she reflected, "about creating your own justice when the system fails. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Zara considered the question seriously. The past year had been difficult. Death threats from white supremacist groups, constant media attention, the stress of testimony and court proceedings. But it had also brought unexpected rewards: friendship with students who admired her courage, respect from adults who'd watched her handle adversity with grace, and the knowledge that she'd helped create real change. "No," she said finally. "I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret fighting back." Her phone buzzed with a text from her guidance counselor. "News crew here wants interview about new anti-harassment policies. Interested?" "Another interview request," she told her father. "You don't have to keep doing them, you know. You've already changed things here." "I know. But maybe one more student will see it and realize they don't have to accept being treated badly." The changes at Westfield High had been comprehensive. The new administration had implemented zero-tolerance harassment policies, mandatory diversity training for all staff, and anonymous reporting systems for students. The football program had been rebuilt from scratch with coaches who prioritized character over wins. The cheerleading squad now actively recruited from all demographics and focused on supporting the entire student body. Most significantly, the school district had hired Dr. Angela Foster, a nationally recognized expert on racial equity in education, as Director of Student Safety and Inclusion. Her first initiative was creating peer mediation programs and restorative justice circles for addressing conflicts before they escalated. 2 weeks later, Zara received an unexpected visitor. Brandon Mills stood nervously on her front porch, accompanied by his mother and a social worker. He looked different, thinner, more mature, with eyes that held genuine remorse rather than the desperate fear she remembered from the trial. "Zara, I don't expect you to forgive me," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now how wrong we were, how much we hurt you." She studied him carefully, seeing none of the arrogance or hatred that had driven him to participate in her harassment. Prison and counseling had changed him, but she remained cautious. "What do you want from me, Brandon?" "Nothing. I just wanted to take responsibility for what I did and tell you I'm sorry. Really sorry." His mother stepped forward. "I'm sorry too, Zara. I failed to raise my son with the values he needed. I'm ashamed of what he did to you." The social worker nodded encouragingly. "Brandon has completed extensive counseling and community service. He wants to dedicate his life to preventing what happened to you from happening to other students." "I'm transferring to Lincoln High," Brandon continued, "starting fresh. But I wanted to make sure you knew that I understand now. What we did was evil, and you had every right to fight back." Zara looked at this broken boy who had once helped destroy her uniform and humiliate her in front of her peers. She felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a tired acknowledgement that justice sometimes looked like this: messy, incomplete, but real. "I hope you've really learned from this, Brandon. I hope you spend the rest of your life making sure other kids never face what I faced." "I will. I promise." As they left, Zara felt a strange sense of closure. Not forgiveness, that would take much longer if it ever came at all, but recognition that people could change, even after committing terrible acts. Standing in her doorway, watching Brandon Mills walk away from her life forever, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. A year ago, she'd been a girl trying to fit into a hostile environment. Now she was a young woman, who'd proven that justice was possible, even when it seemed impossible. She'd fought for her place in the world and won. More importantly, she'd made that place a little safer for everyone who came after her. The battle was over. The victory was complete. And Zara Washington was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.